So we got to start fabricating some parts. So it wouldn't be a full Rustomod build if we didn't fabricate some cool stuff for this thing. Alright, so these are the new wheels for the Buick. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Rustomod. In this episode, we're going to continue working on our sleeper Buick that we're building. So if you guys missed the last few episodes, we picked this thing up from the junkyard for 200 bucks. We ended up getting the thing running and driving, but it actually caught on fire. So what we did was we yanked the motor out of the Buick and got a Silverado for as cheap as we could get. And we parted the Silverado out, and then we actually made some money on the part out of the Silverado. So we took that money and we put it into our Buick engine. So that is a 4.8 that we're going to put twin turbos on. So we're trying to make this thing as sleeper as possible, and we're trying to do this on a budget. So on the last episode, we were working on our turbo kit. We got our intercooler mounted and we have our turbo pipes mocked up. So we have a lot of work to do to get this thing on the road and boosted. So let's get to work on this thing. All right, guys, we are back on the Buick, and in the last episode you saw us make this intercooler and our turbo pipes and stuff. Now we had to remove the front bumper for this thing to fit. So I want to get the front bumper back on the car and we can try to see how the rest of the stuff is going to fit. We put our turbo drains on it on the last episode and we got a lot of stuff done. We also figured out that it's going to be really tight with running the turbos under the hood. So to make an exhaust, we had to remove the fender well. Probably might have to do the same thing on the passenger side. So we got to start fabricating some parts. So it wouldn't be a full Rustomod build if we didn't fabricate some cool stuff for this thing. So I had some parts I made and I want to show you guys the process of that. So that way we can get the Buick looking a little bit better. So earlier this week, I drew up in our CAD system, IronCAD, a file for this radiator support bracket that I wanted to make. And I actually cut it on our water jets over there, and basically we can cut out pretty much any piece that we want, and then I can make it fit to our Buick here. So what we're going to do is I drew up this so that way it's a little bit shorter than the existing radiator support bracket that's on there, because our radiator is a little bit narrower and it's also shifted over. So I have this piece, but I need to bend it to be able to fit our radiator here. Now if you see on the side overlaid, this piece is actually just screwed into the core support right here on the top, and then it kind of clamps it on this side. So what we're going to do is this piece is actually slightly angled and then it bends down to grab the radiator here. So we're going to throw this in the handbrake and try to mimic the bends of the stock radiator support. Then I'm going to throw some rib nuts in here, mount this thing down, put some foam under it so the thing doesn't rattle around, dampens the radiator, and our radiator support should be done. Okay, so I have our new piece here and I marked it basically where I want the bottom portion of this to sit on the core support and that bend to start. So now I'm just going to put it in our handbrake here and try to mimic the 20-ish degrees that it is. We can adjust it a little bit. It's not really critical because it's just a support. Then I can go put it on the Buick, see how it looks, and then bend the rest of it. We have our new piece laid on top of our old piece and we got the angle pretty close. So now I'm gonna go put it on the Buick and make sure that it's correct. Then I can go and bend this 90 degree, make sure that's correct. That looks pretty close, looks pretty good. I think that's gonna work. So now that I have this here, I don't really need the old piece because we're gonna basically be making this. I had marked the core support so I can tell where I want the edge of this to sit, and then I can play with it a little bit. I think I might actually cheat it back some, that way it's not as much overhanging. And then I can go and bend this side and this will just line up with the face of the radiator so it'll kind of clamp it. All right guys, we got our bracket bent up. So I got the side that the radiator is gonna go on, that little kick that it has whenever it goes over the core support. So let's try to fit it on here and see how it looks. All right, so this thing's basically gonna go like this and boom. So I'm gonna have to center it up, but that looks like it'll work perfectly and it looks cool. right, we got our radiator mount on it, scuffed it up. Maybe gonna paint it or something, but it's pretty sturdy, it ain't going nowhere. So now that we got that figured out, I wanna go ahead and figure out this bumper situation. Since last time we had to pull it off, I wanna try to put it back on. And we're gonna try to remove the inside of the bumper. If you remember on the last episode, I had to pull the bumper off because it has this big inside brace on it. So we're gonna pull that brace out and then try to see if we can make it fit on here with the spacing that we have, because we're really tight here with our intercooler. So let me grab it and we'll pull that thing apart. All right, we got our bumper here, and this thing is insanely heavy and it doesn't fit with our intercooler. Basically, the bumper has a giant steel beam in here that we need to remove. So I'm going to try to remove this whole steel beam, but the thing is I have to maintain where it bolts to the frame. So I'm going to have to cut it or do something to be able to make it still bolt to the frame, and then we can have room for our intercooler and stuff. So I'm gonna start pulling this thing apart, and then we can see what we're gonna have to do to fit it on the car. All right, finally got this bumper apart. Half these carriage bolts were just completely stripped out. This one bolt over here I completely cut off, and half the carriage bolts were rounded out like they typically are on these old cars, but I got it. I had to cut a lot of bolts off, but we got it. So now this bumper is much lighter and it's a lot thinner. So gonna try to stick this on the Buick somehow and see how we can make it work. All right, so thinking a little bit on how I'm gonna mount it, what I think is the easiest thing to do is, if you see, this is the original brace that the bumper had. It was attached to the bumper down here. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna chop it. Then I can use the mounts to bolt onto the bumper and then this to bolt onto the frame. It'll still retain the same spacing, and then I can chop it there. Already started chopping it there. Then I can bolt this back onto the bumper and then bolt that to the car. All right, I attached the existing frame rail to the ends of the bumper, and I cut the middle out basically. So this is still adding a lot of weight to the front. I kind of think maybe one day I can make a different bracket that's a lot lighter, but for now, at least we can get it mocked up and see what it looks like with our intercooler in there. So I'm gonna put this on here and see what it looks like. All right, so that's how it's gonna look for now. I still want to get this bumper tighter because now we have a lot of clearance in here. I put this plastic piece back on there because it looked really weird without anything there. It had a really big gap. So I think I'm gonna make some custom brackets to squeeze it in a little bit more. With the intercooler, that actually worked pretty perfectly. It's still getting airflow through basically those two slots on the bumper there, and you barely can see it underneath the bumper, so it looks pretty good. Now that we got our bumper back on the front, I'm going to mess with these turbo pipes and try to finish them up. So in the last episode I was 2 couplers short, so I picked up some on Amazon and I'm gonna slap them on real quick, and then the charge pipe to the intercooler will be done. The only thing I'll have left to do is connect the charge pipe from the intercooler to the engine. But I think I'm gonna wait to do that because I gotta finish the power steering, the wastegates, and all that other stuff. Pipe is a lot easier to route than all that stuff, so I'm gonna wait to do that last probably. So for now, I'm just going to put these couplers on the bottom and then we can start working on some other stuff.
Several long days later.
All right, been a few days since I've last worked on the Buick here, but been working on some other projects, but now we're back. I finally found some wheels and tires that I want to put on this thing. It's kind of hard to find Chevy steel wheels for some reason, but actually it's actually cheaper to get them online. You can get them brand new off Amazon and eBay. So of all places, I ordered some steel wheels on Amazon, so we're gonna try to slap them on. So last time I filmed, I finished the front bumper. It is completely on, and I have finished putting the couplers on the inside of the turbo. So the turbo couplers are on, if you can see them down there, and they are connected to the intercooler right here. So from the turbos to the intercooler are connected. Now we're gonna wait to do the intercooler to the engine because I have to do power steering lines and the wastegates. Wastegates will probably be next. We'll see how far we get. So, kind of switch gears a little bit here, and I have to get this thing up in the air because I'm actually using these two tires for the front tires of the new wheels that are gonna go on this thing. But I gotta lift it up in the air, hop those tires off, and I can show you guys the new wheels. All right, so these are the new wheels for the Buick. They are just plain old steel wheels. So these ones were actually leftovers from the S10 that we did, and I bought some other ones off eBay. They were literally like 50 bucks. So we're trying to find a wheel that was just kind of unassuming, didn't really look like anything, since we're trying to make this thing kind of a sleeper. So these are the hubcaps that I'm gonna run for now. I'm not really in love with them. They're a smoothie style hubcap. I was trying to find like a dog dish style Buick hubcap, but couldn't really find any. They're kind of hard to find. So we're gonna run these on it for now just to kind of see what a hubcap will look like. The other thing I have for this is I want to try to get the front and the rear lowered a little bit, because when we put the LS in here, the front end came up a ton because the motor is a lot lighter than the original motor that was in there. And we've also taken a lot of weight off the front with removing all the internals of the bumper and stuff like that. So I'm gonna try to pop the coil springs out and cut a few coils off there to just try to even the ride height out. And I have some lowering blocks for the rear. We're gonna throw these on, but first I'm gonna tackle the lowering blocks first. So we got the Buick jacked up, and we're going to pull off the rear axle basically and lift it up so we can put our lowering blocks in here. So I know lowering blocks probably aren't the most recommended thing to do, and same with cutting the front springs, probably not the most recommended thing to do, but we're trying to do this on a budget, and cutting the springs is free and lowering blocks are really cheap, and we're going to get the stance of this thing looking pretty good. So we're trying to do this as cheaply as we can. This is what we're going to do. All right, finally got the rear end together. The lowering blocks were a little bit of a pain, kind of a universal kit, so had to clearance some things, but I made it work. So I'll show you guys the final product. All right, got the lowering blocks in. They're tightened down. These were kind of a pain to put in. I had to drill out basically every bolt that went in this thing, but it's assembled. So, moment of truth, let this thing down on the ground and see what it looks like. All right, first wheel on with the hubcap. They look a little bit better than I was thinking they were gonna look. Like I said, I was looking for some old Buick hubcaps, but that is what the tire size is gonna look like in the rear. Gotta throw the other one on, lower it down, and see if we'll have some clearance with our new lowering blocks in the back. All right, I don't know. I think I really like these hubcaps on there now that I see it on the car. Let's lower this thing down and see what it looks like. The front isn't lowered yet, so we'll come back and torch the front springs, get it to sit even with the back, but I'm excited just to see what the rear looks like.
A few moments later.
All right guys, I couldn't leave you with just seeing the back lowered, so I had to go and lower the front. Now, I just actually torched the front springs. I know it's not the most recommended thing to do, probably will ride terrible, but I just wanted to get the front lowered as quickly as possible before I ran out of daylight here, so you guys could see what it's gonna look like. We'll probably end up getting springs or other kind of suspension later on, so it's actually more comfortable to drive and stuff like that. But if, for instance, you don't have a lot of money, you're a kid in high school, and you want to get your car looking a little bit better and trying to get the stance right, doing some lowering blocks, heating up the springs a little bit, getting it to sit a little bit lower, changes the look of the vehicle dramatically. And I can't believe how good the Buick actually looks. I was really not into the body style of this car when I first got it, but now I actually really like the way that it turned out. So I can't wait for you guys to see it. Check it out. Alright guys, this thing came out way cooler than I thought it would look. The steelies, the hubcaps, and the stance that it has now makes this car look really good. The wheels and tires really make this thing look pretty cool, and obviously lowering it is going to make it look a lot cooler. But I think that fits the body style of this car really well. I wasn't sure if the smoothie hubcaps were going to look good, but I think it looks really nice. And I don't think that it's really eye-catching, so I'll still call it a sleeper. But this thing is turning out pretty sweet. For as little money invested, this is a pretty sweet car to drive around and stuff. I can't believe you can get these things as cheap as they are, because they're essentially basically just a Nova underneath. Now the back does sit a little bit lower than the front because I have a bunch of parts and everything else in the trunk, so I'm sure it'll come up a little bit and be a little bit more level once I take all that stuff out. But there's a good look at what the Buick has turned into. A little bit of mid-build motivation on this thing, and it turned out really nice. So I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys stay tuned for the next few episodes where we try to get this thing running and driving. We have a lot of work to go, and we have a lot of other projects that we're doing, so we're kind of bouncing back and forth right now, but we'll get it done and it'll turn out really cool. So you're not going to want to miss all the future episodes we have here on Rustomod. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks.